Okay, it says we are live. So here we are. Oh, people already saying hi to you, Sherry, over there in the
Oh, great. Oh,
chat
I need to
box
put it in the comments.
there. Well,
Oh, that's
thank
great.
you. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to have a super event. Raise a glass with Sherry Harris is what we're kind of. Oh, we'll raise our glasses here.
Here's to you.
I'm super excited to be talking with Sherry about her book, From Beer to Eternity. It's the first book in her new Sea Glass Saloon Mystery Series, which is set in the Panhandle of Florida. I just finished it this week and I loved it. And I told Sherry how I had put little marks in it of things that I wanted to talk to her about if we have time. Um, Sherry is the Agatha Award nominated author of the Sarah Winston Garage Sale Mystery Series. She is the immediate past president of Sisters in Crime and a member of the Mystery Writers of America. She loves books, beaches, bars, and Westies, but not necessarily in that order. And we're not going to ask her to, to state her order here. I find it fascinating that she is also a patent holder, patent holding inventor. And she and her husband and her guard dog Lily live in Northern Virginia until they figure out where they want to move next. So we're not going to spend any more time with me talking about Sherry. We're here to hear Sherry talk. But if you have a question for Sherry or a comment, put it in the chat box and we'll get to as many of them as we have time for. And we're going to get started. So Sherry, first tell us about the new series. How did it come about?
First, I want to thank you, Eileen, for hosting me.
Oh, I'm thrilled to.
Tell you how fabulous your staff are. I got a message on that today is the day that we moved here 10 years ago. And I think 2 years later, I went to my first Chessie chapter Sisters in Crime meeting at One More Page. And I just met you and you were so warm and wonderful. And so thanks for all you do for the mystery community and the writing community.
I think everyone knows that mysteries are my favorite genre.
Okay, so how did the series come about? My editor at Kensington and I had been tossing ideas back and forth, and we couldn't hit on anything we both loved. I had written one that was going to be set in an adult community center, and he kind of liked that, but we never did anything with it. We talked about rolling out a series with Harriet, who is in Cello Sweet Harriet in the Garage Sale Mystery. We talked about doing a series with her. We talked about some other ideas. And then one day he said, why don't you do a series set in a bar in Key West? And I was like, wow. And then I thought, Lucy Burdett writes that fabulous series set in Key West. I've never been there, and I don't think that I could really do a good job of that. And so I said, I don't know anything about Key West, but I lived in the Panhandle of Florida for 3 years. I've visited since the late 80s. I continue to go now, and maybe we could set the series there. And he wrote back and he said, Key West is out, Destin is in.
The first book in any new series is pivotal for setting the stage for everything in the series to come. What's the premise and backstory of From Beer to Eternity?
So the story starts with Chloe Jackson. She's a children's librarian in Chicago,
which I found really cool.
Thanks. It was fun to include that. And I tapped my librarian friends for tips. But she has promised her best friend Boone that if anything happened to him while he was serving in Afghanistan, she would go help his grandmother at the bar. And the worst happens, and she ends up going down there. So I thought this was a brilliant, unique, creative way to get somebody from one location to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Only then I realized, oh my God, her best friend died. She's going to be depressed the whole book. What am I going to do? So anybody that's writing, think carefully before you set up your story.
That's good for the part where we talk about people who are interested in being mystery writers to think it all through.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit more about Chloe. You mentioned that she's a children's librarian, and she moves to town to she's not viewing this as a forever kind of thing. She's kind of like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to be out, but I think who she is explains why she's there longer than she anticipates. So tell us a little bit about her.
So she's 28. She's smart. I think librarians are always smart. So she's resourceful. She's used to finding information on her own. And so she uses those skills as a librarian to help her when Vivi, the owner of the bar, and Boone's grandmother, is accused of murder. And Chloe comes from a family, she's the youngest, she had two older brothers who kind of always teased her, and that really influenced who she was. But she's very loyal, and she does a lot of water sports. She's kind of adventurous, sometimes too
adventurous.
Yes, too adventurous.
I mean, and she has to be very strong and very loyal because Vivi does not want her there. And she makes no bones about that.
She doesn't want her there. So she comes up with this story that she drives a vintage red Volkswagen Beetle that she has to find and order this part. And she doesn't have the money, so she has to work at the bar so she can earn the money to get back home. And that she sticks with that through several sets of people who kind of all suspect her to be up to no good.
Yeah. And did you ever own a vintage Volkswagen Beetle?
I did not.
Oh, okay.
But when I was, I have a really good friend that sadly has passed, but we did a lot of research together and had so much fun. And we were in this town of Grayton Beach, Florida, going to a bar called the Red Bar. And while we were walking from our parking place, there was a silver vintage Beetle sitting there. And we both looked at it and went, that's what Chloe's car is.
Yeah, she talks about the car a lot, but, obviously the car is never in action. How many of us are familiar with Sarah Winston, from the Garage Sale Mysteries. Are Sarah and Chloe similar or alike or just totally different?
So Sarah is about 10 years older than Chloe at the start of the Garage Sale Mysteries. And she has more life experience than Chloe does. They both are new to the areas they're living in and have to create a new life for themselves. Now, Sarah has some friends because she moved from a military base into the town next to the military base. But Chloe has none of that. And so she's more alone than Sarah was. But they're both tenacious. They're both loyal. Sarah doesn't know how to cook. Chloe does. I tried to create a lot of differences between the two of them.
What was the hardest part about writing this book? Is it because it's a new series or a new place? Or what would you say was the most challenging thing for you in writing this new book?
Actually, the hardest thing for me was just to get over the fear of starting a new series.
Oh.
It was in my head that, I really worried a lot about, are people going to say it's not as good? What if they don't like it? And I had to keep pushing that all away as I was writing the book. So
your safety blanket, and now you're going out cold to something else.
Right.
I mentioned to you earlier this week when we were talking is that one of the things that I enjoyed about the book, I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but there were so many viable murder suspects, and they were all viable murder suspects, and they were not, sometimes you're kind of like, oh, it couldn't be them, but you kind of kept a whole lot of balls up in the air, you know, with red herrings and just giving us little dribs and drabs. When you start a book, did you know who the murderer was going to be?
I didn't. And it actually changed as I was writing the book. I did a little more planning with this book. I blog with a group of women called the Wicked Cozy Authors, and one of them is really good at plotting. And so we spent some time, and she kind of helped me come up with the idea of the heritage business owners, and
which was really interesting.
Oh, thank you. And then, so who could be suspects in the story?
Well, it's filled with a lot of quirky things, as and one of them that I found and I marked at the very beginning was the gentleman who gets murdered, and he gets murdered pretty early on, so I'm not giving anything away. Youre wears a armadillo shell on his head. And it's kind of like, where the heck does something like that come from? Have you ever run into somebody who wears strange things on their head?
No, I don't know. It was just one of those things that popped into my head, and I thought it was kind of funny and different. And
it surely was. Like I said, I marked it right at the beginning of the book, and I was like, wow. And it's not really till the end where you figure out a little bit more about why he's doing it, and that he's not doing it at everywhere. But that was very interesting, I thought.
I actually did Google armadillo shell hats.
Did anything come
anybody
up?
Wants one?
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So if anybody wants to reenact a scene from the book, apparently you can purchase your own armadillo shell hat. Now, you said you lived in the Panhandle for a couple of years, and did you go or did you frequent a bar that was similar to the Sea Glass Saloon anywhere? And tell us about your research for this book and the Sea Glass Saloon, because I'm sure there's some stories about that too.
So we went to some bars, but I had a daughter that was younger at home, so not a lot of time for that. And so really most of the research occurred after I found out that the series was a go in February of 2018. Mm-hmm. And my mom still lives in the Panhandle, and so I go down and visit her, and my girlfriend and I would go out to bars. What a terrible research time it was.
So horrible.
Awful. So there was two that kind of struck me. One is the Red Bar in Grayton Beach, which sadly it burned down.
Oh, wow.
Maybe a month after we had been there. I had been there before, but they just rebuilt and reopened like 2 weeks ago. And then there's a restaurant I'd gone to a bunch of times called the Whale's Tail, Beach, Florida. And my friend Claire was like, did you know there's a bar underneath it? And I didn't. And it just this, like, you walk up to the window, there's a few chairs and tables out. It closes at 9 o'clock. And I just went, oh, that's what I want to do. I didn't want to have this bar that was open until the wee hours of the morning and dealing with really drunk people. And so that's where I got the idea to do that. And I kind of picture it similar a little bit to the Whale's Tail.
Well, and what's, the fact that you have the hours and that it's not, like a typical bar. Right. I love that the bartender may be late because he is out fishing in the morning.
Right.
And so there's for Chloe, who has her experiences as a librarian, not as a bartender. She's over there using her librarian research skills to look up how to make drinks. So she really does not want the bartender to ever be late.
Right.
And probably the patrons don't either.
Exactly.
So is Emerald Cove based on an area that you know of? I mean, it it there's a lot of the backstory of what's going on in the town in terms of the potential for development and the fact that it is a tourist area. So Chloe can't even find a place to stay.
Right.
She lives in her car for the first couple of days. So is that a place that you frequented or lived in?
So, Destin, Florida is kind of the big town that's next to where I put
Yes.
Emerald Cove. And Destin is really crazy busy in the summers. It's, that's the 3 months that they make their most money. And then they have another winter period with the snowbirds, but the traffic gets terrible. What you can rent a place for in January for a month is what you can rent a place in July for a week.
Mm.
And so I created this little town that's just to the east of Destin. And there's two small towns to the east of Destin, one of them being Grayton Beach, and one is Seaside, Florida. Seaside, Florida is like considered to be the first, what do they call it, urban planned community.
Okay.
Where they, made it walkable, and there's all these cool houses that kind of look alike, but they're in various sizes. And they originally kind of planned it to be an artist, musician, teacher, a place where the community could really come together. And then Grayton Beach is this old beach town that is from like the 1800s, the late 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
And it has really preserved, there's no high rises, and there's some beautiful old homes. And so I kind of had those two concepts in my head when I created Emerald Cove.
One of the, actually, I think it's the first thing that you come to when you're reading the book is the heritage businesses list.
Uh-huh.
And did that, which is a key part of the story, is who these heritage businesses are and what they are. Mm-hmm. And did that come from a city or a town that you were familiar with that had, kind of their, I'm going to say like they're the pillars of the community, but they're longtime family businesses that were there before, all the, tourism hit the area.
Right. I just kind of created that, but I read a lot of research and about how Destin started, which was kind of from a fisherman from New England went down there and started fishing, and it became this fishing village. And there are some old families that have lived in Destin forever, or Fort Walton Beach, the town next to it. And I just thought it would be kind of interesting to create this kind of group of people that are very close to each other, that like their grandparents knew each other, their parents knew each other, and their kids know each other, and how to play that dynamic of the good and bad of those relationships in the book.
Yeah. It was, I'm just switching gears for 1 second because you reminded me of something that I said to someone at the store about your book, which was there obviously is a male that there is some chemistry with, but we really don't see a whole lot of him in this book. He, pops in, but he's not like a overwhelming presence in this book. And I actually kind of enjoyed that because we got a chance to learn about her, and it was a lot more about her relationship with Vivi,
right?
Her friend's grandmother,
right?
And then it was about this possible love interest. Was that like a specific, thought process, or was that just the way organically the story developed?
No, that was really deliberate. And one of the reasons I did that is Barbara Ross, who writes the main Clam Bake series, had mentioned to me once, maybe more than once, that she wished she would have slowed things down with the relationships in her series. And so I really deliberately didn't include him a lot.
I like that. Because it's so often that can kind of overtake the main story.
Right. And I like a lot of romance mysteries, but a lot of mystery readers don't. And so I tried to keep it aside. And besides, Sarah had so many romantic entanglements. She would be a little different.
Well, I have to ask you, the titles of your book are always so clever. How do you come up with them? We've asked Dawn Andrews this question as well, because her titles are very clever, but both of your series have great titles.
Some of them pop into my head. My From Beer to Eternity did. My editor has come up with some of them. He came up with The Longest Yard Sale.
Mm-hmm.
He came up with Sell Low, Sweet Harriet. And I don't know. Oh, I know where I've gotten some of them. There's this thing called a pun generator. So for the Sarah books, I could plug a word in that might have something to do with, sale or bet or trade. And so that's how I've gotten a few of the titles.
Well, they're definitely ones that, capture people's attention. Which is a key thing in with the vast number of books that are out there. You've got to have something that in a second can get someone's attention, and a clever title like that I think catches people's attention, but also makes them think it's got to be a clever book. I did note one of the things that you said in there, which was at some point someone says to her, "Bless your heart." And I have Rebecca, who works at our stores, from North Carolina. And, my brother lives in North Carolina with his wife. And so I know that "bless your heart" isn't always as friendly as it might sound. So I think she figured that out.
Yes.
When somebody said it to her. Before I know we want to talk a little bit about some advice for people writing mysteries, but I do have to ask: are there going to be any more Sarah Winston mysteries, or have you? Okay, good.
The 9th one comes out at the end of December and is called "Absence of Alice," which is one of the titles my editor came up with. And so then I had to create an Alice that was absent. So. But it was fun.
How do you come up with your character names?
Oh, I hate naming characters. So some of them I steal from friends. And in the Sarah books, I see a couple of my sorority sisters from college are on here. And I combine names. Stella Wilde is 2 sorority sisters, and I can't remember her name. Anyways, nothing. I steal people's names. I'll go on Facebook, and if I'm desperate for a name, and I'll take the first 2 people in my feed. And so there's a character in From Beer to Eternity that's named Ed Ashford, and that was Mary Ashford who popped up, and Ed Amar. I went, oh, that's a good name.
Oh, Ed, you are in here if you're watching.
So I did turn in. So I work with Barb Goffman. She's an independent editor, and I turned the manuscript into her From Beer to Eternity. And one of her notes was, boy, that blank family sure has a lot of members in it. And it was because I couldn't think of last names. And so it was so-and-so blank and so-and-so blank.
So they weren't really all members of the same family.
There's not a blank family in the book.
Well, I don't know if you can see, Art Taylor says that you need to have a character named Dash.
I
So
should. I
have in mind for a
should.
future book.
Absolutely. It's a
Um,
great name.
Now, can you share a little bit about, any advice that you might have for people who are interested in writing mysteries?
Oh, yes. So, of course, I'm going to say join Sisters in Crime.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's near and dear to my heart. I don't know if I would have gotten published if I hadn't joined, just because I met so many fabulous people.
Yeah.
And I really believe that you have to study the craft of writing. I have 2.5 novels in my computer that will probably never see the light of day. And I think you can't give up. I have stacks of rejection letters, and I just kept trying to learn more about writing. I also think reading authors you admire is important. So,
Mm-hmm.
yep.
I've heard a lot of authors say that they have a manuscript under their bed that they hope never sees the light of day. Do you have one of those?
Right. I have 2.5 of them. And every time I mentioned it to my agent, he was like, yeah, no, I don't think so. So,
Okay, I was just going to say, do you ever think about going back to them?
I took out the first one and I sent the first 50 pages to Barb Goffman, and she
Just send them back.
She sent me back some notes, and she goes, I know you can fix this because you're a good writer. And so like, oh.
So they're going to stay under the bed is what I'm hearing here.
I believe so. And I did borrow parts of that series for the Sarah books. Mm-hmm. It was a Air Force wife who was divorced and starting a new life. But that one was set in Seattle, and she was a gemologist. But I stole a few tidbits from it.
Do you think, I think you've moved around a lot, and based on your bio, you would move again. Is that, do you think that does thinking of the places that you lived give you inspiration for other series that you might want to do?
Oh, yeah. Actually, my hometown is Davenport, Iowa. Mm-hmm. And it's a city of about 100,000, and the area is about 400,000. And there's a hotel there, and Cary Grant died in that hotel. It's this beautiful old Art Deco hotel. There's a bowling alley in the basement. There's stained glass.
Wow.
And I thought about this character that goes to work in that hotel, and Cary Grant comes to her. And nobody else can see him, but it just seemed like it would be kind of fun. And actually, some sorority sisters, I stayed in that hotel, and mm-hmm. two of us were in the room. There was a distinct knock on the door. Sherry went over, opened the door, and nobody's there. And we both felt a cold breeze. And we looked down the hall, and you can see all the way end to end, and nobody was there. And so I was
kind of freaky.
Sherry?
So that would be like a little bit of venturing into the paranormal.
Right. So who knows? Maybe someday.
Well, I was going to say, is it, you mentioned that your, I don't know, I think you said it was your agent or your editor, had talked to you about starting the new series. And would you have done that had they not prompted you? Were you ready to, try something different?
I was ready. I love writing the Sarah books, but I thought it would be fun to try something new too. And I have a list of different ideas. One set out in Wyoming, in a custom wear for cowboys and rodeo princesses. And so I'm always thinking of different things I might want to write. I have another one that's more of it's about a family of spies that the daughter wants to be a spy too, but she can't pass the physical, and everybody keeps telling her, no, you don't need to be a spy. And so who knows? if there was only more time.
Well, do you ever think of writing, your two series that you have now are both cozies. Do you think about writing a different, style or, like a, everyone knows that I'm kind of like I read a lot of those books, but do you ever think about writing a book like that? Do you ever just want to, get down and bloody and stuff like that?
I thought about it, but I kind of feel like that's not my thing. I read a lot of those books. I love reading thrillers.
Mm-hmm.
I like noir.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how I ended up really in this genre, but I love writing them. And I do have like 30,000 words of a very light romance written that I really want to finish one of these days. So we'll see.
Yeah, I was going to say romance is, and I didn't even have much to drink.
Sure, you said that was water in your glass.
It's actually, pure vodka.
Yeah.
Were you? I guess because Chloe is not a bartender, you didn't have to have bartending experience to, write this book.
No, but I did call on. I have a sorority sister that her daughter is a bartender in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a great phone conversation where she, was calling liquor spirits and giving me different terms and telling me what kind of a bar, now I can't think of what they call them, but back bar person would do, which is kind of what Chloe is.
Yes. Yeah.
She's chopping the fruit and running the drinks and
right.
that kind of stuff. So that was a really great conversation.
We have a couple questions, so I'm just going to, pop some of these up, and you'll be able to see them as will everyone else. What do you do when you get stuck on plotting, asking for a friend?
So that's from Tara, who is a fabulous writer, and everybody should read her new book.
Yes.
It was so good. So I took, when I lived in Florida, Florida International University had classes, or a retreat in the panhandle of Florida. And John Dufresne was one of the instructors. And he said, when you get stuck, to stop and write down everything your character can see, everything your character can hear, everything your character can feel and smell. And that almost always works to get me unstuck.
Oh,
and he has some fabulous writing books. The Lie That Tells the Truth is one of my favorites. So that's what I do.
Okay, well, another one from the household there is Art Taylor wants to know, during the recent stay-at-home orders, have you done less writing or more writing? I've seen a lot of things on social media, authors talking about this, and it seems to be across the board. How about for you?
I had a ton of trouble writing through March and April. I heard some people had trouble reading, but I read book after book after book because it just gave me an escape.
Yeah.
But I have a book due, the second Chloe book, in the fall, so I had to start writing, whether I wanted to or not.
They're not very flexible with deadlines, are they?
Well, actually, my editor was great. The year I was president of Six Sisters in Crime, I foolishly planned to write 3 books and quickly realized that wasn't going to happen. And so he was fabulous. I was very lucky.
Yeah, I mean, on our side of the fence, on the bookstore side of the fence, we're seeing not so much now, but during March and April, we were seeing a lot of release dates slide.
I noticed that too.
And it's not that the books weren't done, because obviously if they were going to come out in March or April, they were ready. But because of the fact that most of the indie bookstores were closed and Barnes and Noble were closed, that the vehicle for the word to get out about new books it was limited. And we haven't seen as much of that, but that was definitely something we saw on our side, was
Right.
virtually no new books.
I think even some publishers even slid some of their summer releases to the fall.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, and another big change that we saw, which is more impactful, I think, for new authors, is we used to get a lot of ARCs, advanced reader copies. So it's a
Right.
great opportunity to read somebody who you're not familiar with, and that stopped immediately,
Right.
which is disappointing, because I have found some great authors and series that way. And I'm kind of looking forward to doing that again. So,
Right.
all right. Speaking of reading and people that we love to read, Jennifer Price wants to know, what are your favorite authors to read?
Oh, that's
Or who are
always
your
such a
favorite?
hard question. I love Julia Spencer Fleming's books.
Mhm.
In fact, I just picked up her latest.
Yes, you did. Yeah, I love her stuff too.
Yes. Um, Art Taylor, who just asked a question, is a fabulous writer. His wife, it's just amazing that one family can have two such talented people in it. And Dash is amazing too. So
Wait till he starts to write.
exactly. Um, who else do I like to read? I read just a wide variety. Kelly Garrett is a fabulous writer. I loved her Detective by Day series, and Jennifer Howe wrote the cutest cozy. It came out, I think, in March, and it has the funniest cat in it, and it just was the perfect balm for what I was reading then. And so Cheryl Head is another local writer. She writes an amazing series set in Detroit. So I guess that's a broad spectrum.
Do you tend to read mostly mystery?
Mystery or thrillers.
Okay.
That's what I read the most. I do occasionally need an escape and read some women's fiction, but mostly my house when I was growing up was filled with mysteries and thrillers, and we'd all just pass them around. And so
my mom was a Rex Stout fan, so I read all of her Rex Stout books, my sister and I. So here's one that's perfect for fitting right in with the theme for tonight. Amy Hicks wants to know, have you listened to the podcast Martinis and Murder, True Crime and Drink Recipes? You can't beat that combination.
Bloody Marys. I haven't listened to that, Amy. I'll have to get a try. Amy Hicks is another fabulous local author.
We had her at the store. I am, my niece turned me on to the Crime Junkies podcast, so I listened to that. But now I've gone, it's like all crime, murder and mayhem in my podcast. But that's actually something that I haven't wanted to listen to as much. I would say the Crime Junkies are on the pretty, they're not cozy, but they're not as, a lot of the other ones that I had been listening to were like serial killers. And it's just like, I cannot right now. So I'm going to have to check out the Martinis and Murder, because that sounds like that would be a fun one too.
That does sound fun. I can read pretty dark stuff, but I don't like to read books through the eyes of a serial killer. That just scares me too much.
No. Let's see. Do you have a writing routine, and has it changed due to the pandemic?
So I like to write in the afternoon. I'm not a morning person, and so I like to write usually between 2 and 4. But the closer I am to my deadline and the farther I'm behind, I'll write anytime I'm awake. So when I'm doing well, it's every afternoon. I usually write 1,000 words, and I swear when I see that 1,000-word mark hit, I'll just quit. I don't care if it's in the middle of a sentence. I'm like, I am done.
So I've heard a lot of mystery authors talk about whether they're a pantser or a plotter. Which are you?
Mostly a pantser. I have been trying to get better at plotting. Jesse, my friend, helped me just crock it with this book, and Julie Henricus, who writes as Julia Henry too. She helped me with the plot for Absence of Alice. We were driving from New Hampshire back to Boston, and we just kind of talked that book out.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I tend to throw stuff at the screen. I have to write a short synopsis for my editor. So, but that kind of tends to change as I go along. Some editors require a much more extensive synopsis or outlines. So I'm glad I don't have to do that.
Maybe that's why you're able to have so many possible murder suspects, is you yourself haven't decided who it is, so you have to make them all viable. So you have that option.
That could be. I remember hearing Patricia Cornwell talk at the National Book Festival one year. And she said she didn't know who did it until she followed the clues to who did it, which I thought was really interesting.
I heard an author who was speaking at the store one time say that their editor did not like who the murderer was and wanted them to change it. And so they did. And then the author had to go back and put some clues in there. But then, a lot of people said, wow, I had no idea it was going to be that person. And the author was like, neither did I, So.
Well, Barb Gothman, again, who edits for me, I turned in, I think it was The Gun Also Rises to Her. And she, in her notes, said I figured out who did it right away. And she'd never said that to me. And it freaked me out. And so I changed who did it. And then I realized I'd kind of been setting that person up for several books. And so it was really interesting to me.
And it's having the other person, having someone else reading it points out things that, in your head, you make connections that don't always get written, and it takes someone who doesn't sometimes know anything about it to read it and say, I don't know what you're doing there. Or I knew immediately who it was. Whoops. Oh no. I did something there. Let me get back there. Hold on. Someone wanted to know, what is your #1 tip for writers?
Oh, Stacy. Stacy is a fabulous short story writer. She probably has better tips than I do. It would be find your community of writers. I just think that's so important, networking with people. I was at New England Crime Bake, which is a fabulous conference every year in Boston, the Boston area. And my friend Barbara Ross shoved me at her agent and said, you've got to pitch your book. And this was the book that's still under the bed or on the computer, whatever you want to call it. And so, I mean, she literally pushed me. So I stumbled up in front of her, and I pitched my book, and he's like, yeah, no, I'm not interested. You got anything else? And I'm like, no. And he said, well, do you have any hobbies? And I go, I read. And then I just kind of backed away. But then 2 weeks later, my now editor at Kensington, got hold of that very same agent, John Talbot, and said, hey, do you have anybody that would want to write a cozy series with garage sales as a theme? And John got hold of Barb, and Barb got hold of me. And yeah, so
it's one of the things that, we talk about this at the store often, is the amazing community of mystery writers, with the Sisters in Crime and Mystery Writers of America. And there's just so many amazing authors here. There's an amazing number of authors here, but just the support that you all have for each other. And you all seem to generally like each other in real life too, that you're not just part of a group together. You support each other, and you seem to really have a lot of fun.
We
So
do. It's just been amazing. I can't even imagine not having the support of the other writers in this area. And it was the same when I was in New England. It's just such a good community. I had a romance writer, a very famous romance writer that I'm not going to name her name, but I had lunch with her at BoucherCon one year, and she says everybody in the crime fiction community is so nice because it must be because you kill people on the page and you get it out of your system.
yeah, I mean, I've not seen this with other genres. It really seems to, at least for us, seems to be particular to the mystery genre.
I
Now,
agree.
this should be an easy question. What are you currently reading?
Oh, what am I? Oh, I'm reading a cozy mystery called Witch Hunt by Kate Conti, who is a good friend of mine. So it's fun to read her book. And I also have Kate Atkinson's second book queued up and ready to go. I'm so behind on her series, and I really loved the first one. So
I think I just finished yours, obviously, and so I have a new Anne Cleves and I have the new Louise Penny, both of
oh,
which come out later this year. So this is one of those times where we get to read things ahead of when they're coming out, and so you can't really. I mean, you can talk about it, but it's but
you're so lucky.
I know that's what I do with my book. I was going to say, but I really enjoyed reading this one.
Oh, thank you so much.
um, Josh wants to know: have you ever written someone much like yourself in a book or short story as a character? That's an interesting question.
So Sarah Winston in the Garage Sale Mysteries and I are kind of alike. She was an Air Force wife like I was. She's divorced. I was divorced a long time ago before I met my wonderful Bob.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have been married 30 years this September.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And so Sarah has some similarities. However, if I ever stumbled across a dead body, I'd run screaming or faint or get sick or something. And instead of going, oh, I need to figure this out.
That's when I look at Chloe in in the new book, she has a lot of shocks to her system, in terms of finding a dead body and some of the things that happen to her as she's trying to uncover it. But also, she's there because her best friend in the whole world has been killed in the war. And then there's also allusions to something that had happened long ago in her life also. So she's troubled. She's not troubled, but she has a very interesting backstory that I guess I'm glad that was not based on you.
Yes.
Do any of your friends ever ask you if you're writing about them? Does anyone look at that and say, oh, that's me? Or no?
No, nobody has ever said that to me, which I think is interesting. So I've covered up their traits well.
You may have used their names, but not their traits.
Exactly. Although in the Sarah books, the DiNapolis,
Mm-hmm.
we have good friends from Massachusetts that are the DiNapolis. And I did borrow some of Luigi DiNapoli's characteristics to create Angelo DiNapoli. So, he would say things like, if you mess with the bull, you get the horns. So I used that in the book.
Well, I liked in the how different all of the heritage owners are in the new book. They all have these very different personalities. And and I think that, Chloe thinks that she's being kind of subtle trying to ask her questions, but everyone seems to be onto her immediately.
She's got to work on that if she's going to have any success in the future.
Well, yeah. Yes.
It was really fun thinking about all those characters and what their lives would be like, and what it would be like to live in some place for so long that you are so grounded in. And maybe that's because as a military wife, you move so much that I really haven't had that since I left home for college when I was 18.
Yeah, because Chloe's really the outsider. I mean,
Right.
she's one of the few outsiders in that town.
Right.
And so that's why I think it would be very hard for her to, go out and ask these questions and have people not really wonder about it. It's not like she's, in a lot of cozy mysteries, the person who is the sleuth is someone who's part of the community, an established part of the community, and she is not. So that's a little bit different than you see in a lot of other books.
Right. And I enjoyed growing her friendship with Joaquin, the bartender, and yet she's afraid she's going to say the wrong thing, or and then lose him as a friend, and she's told some lies, like about meeting the part, and she wonders how people will react when that comes out.
Yeah.
And, so most of the people, though, started to accept her towards the end of the book.
Yeah. Well, I think her devotion to Vivi, they did see that. So
Right.
I don't want to give, I have to be careful what I say because I do not want to give things away. That's the worst thing you can do when you're talking about someone's book. Well, if there aren't any more questions or anything else you want to say before we kind of wrap things up?
Just, I hope people enjoy the book, and it's so lovely to have all of you out there listening to this. And I know time is precious, and I know it's just great to see people over there on the chat side. And Eileen, you guys are so fabulous. And you can order signed copies of the book through One More Page, which is lovely that Eileen is willing to do that for me. And so
I'm happy to do it.
A big thank you for being such a great presence in our community.
Thank you. And what's the release date for the Sarah Winston book?
December 28th.
Oh.
So right after Christmas, when you need something good to read.
That's what you can do with all the gift cards that people give you for Christmas, is go and buy the new Sarah Winston book. And then is it going to be that the Sarah Winston cycle is in the winter and the Chloe cycle is in the summer, or it's not that established?
I'm not sure. I know the next Chloe book is coming out this time next year. So we'll see what happens with that. And that one is called A Time to Swill, which is a takeoff of John Grisham's book, A Time to Kill. And oddly enough, as I was writing today, John Grisham kind of creeped in there a little bit. So kind of fun. I didn't plan that. I never do.
Well, I can't wait for both of them. And I hope that whether it's virtual or in person, that you will let us be part of your launch of your book. So
absolutely, you guys are the best.
Well, thank you, and thank you for everyone who came out and watched it. It will also be up on our Facebook and YouTube, and there'll be a link on our website if you wanted to watch it again, because I know some people came in late. And just, hey, go enjoy. Lift your glass there.
It's still kind of full, isn't it?
I know. Well, I've been making you talk the whole time, so now you can wet your whistle there.
Oh, thanks to everybody who took the time to come. Thanks, Eileen.
Oh, my pleasure.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.